I mean, lives are at stake,
But
you know, so that was...
readable and approachable this book has been so far.
Literally shaking.
Magical realism.
Yeah.
And I like that.
The pants are coming off.
What chapter are you on?
55. Claire might show back up.
Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Maddie and this is my husband Brock. 2 years ago he read A Court of Thorns and Roses, and this video right here, I'm going to put it on the screen. It is a sit-down video, so we kind of talked through his thoughts and like what he was feeling throughout the book. But this time we're going to be doing a reading vlog where actually he reads A Court of Mist and Fury. The long-awaited, you guys have been waiting so long.
Yeah, it's a long time coming.
The comments have been crazy on that video.
2 years
You guys
later.
really want him to read it, and he's finally gonna read it. But I am gonna read one of his books, The Master and Margarita. I always want to say The Master and the Margarita.
I know. Well, it's funny because in the Russian there's no the, but we need an article.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be reading one of his books. He's gonna be reading one of mine. A little bit different than what I planned for this video because I just wanted to do his, but I thought it would be fun to swap a book.
I never read any fantasy, let alone romantasy, and she never really reads any classic literature, modern literature, or you read some literary fiction, but not typically in this kind of sphere,
I'm really nervous to get into this because I don't want to DNF. This whole video I'm going to try my best not to DNF. I'm more nervous about the fact that it might not be as readable as the books that I currently read. You know, there's bigger words, or just the grammar might be different, or lots of similes, metaphors, motifs, all of the other literary fiction kind of stuff. Yes. So what about A Court of Mist and Fury? What are your expectations?
I don't know. It's a very different writing style. It's more, I think, visually stimulating with this type of genre than it is intellectually or thematically, or again, like vocabulary might be quite different. A bit more plain, for better or for worse. So I wonder what it'll be like. And also I'll have to refresh my memory on what happened in A Court of Thorns and Roses. So
yes,
I'm jumping back in the mass verse.
Yep, but it is good job. I'm surprised you remembered that. He gets more reels in like Sarah J. Maas than I do, but you already know this is one thing, I guess, like the 2-year gap, because he kind of knows about like Tamlin and Rhys and kind of the
because you talked about it so much.
No, you saw like Tamlin's tears, and you've seen a lot of media against Tamlin, so you kind of already have that in your head.
Yeah.
You know, but
I'm not going in blind.
Yeah, he's not going in blind.
You are.
But yes, I'm going in completely blind.
Blind as a bat.
But we'll probably just do like percent updates here and there, just 25 here, 25% there, and we'll catch you guys up.
Woo!
Woo! Right.
Ooh!
It begins. You ready?
I'm literally shaking.
So excited.
Map. I'm gonna take it in. High court, day court, dawn court, fade court. Alright. Nebraska's right here.
No, come on.
Highern?
Highburn.
That's a B.
Yeah.
Okay. It didn't even tell me it's chapter 1. Oh, because it's not.
Okay. Alright, I'm gonna let you read. I really want to reread it now. I'm like missing out. Like I have FOMO.
Sarah doesn't want to be a stay-at-home fae.
No, she doesn't.
She wants to
She
go
doesn't want to paint.
earn her keep. She doesn't want to paint.
No.
No, she's not a staff. She wants to go out.
A staff.
Yeah. 44 pages in. I'm into the 5th chapter. I mean, what's there to tell? Rhys just showed up, crashed the wedding, as expected. I felt it coming. That? I thought it coming because earlier she mentioned right here, they're like, oh, he's probably running scared now that Tamlin's got his powers back. And Fioru's says, then you don't know Rhys very well at all. He just, boom, shows up right on cue. And
Did you want her to marry Tamlin?
It seems like he's not sure of himself. He's not confident.
So I started The Master and Margarita yesterday, right? And I'm 40 pages in. I don't have a ton of thoughts.
Break down the setting. Can you
okay,
describe it?
So they're, what is it, Patriarch Pond?
They're Patriarch Ponds.
Like in the, I
they're
kind of
Moscow.
envision it as like they're just, I know you said I could look it up and like see the pond, just kind of in the middle of a city.
Yeah, just like a little pond in the middle of a city. Like a park.
Yeah, like a park. Yeah. And there's an editor and there's a poet. They're kind of sitting and chatting about like their work, and Jesus Christ comes into it a lot. Like, is Jesus real? Is he like a fictional, just character that people made up, or is he be
a historical
figure. Some random man shows up, and they ended up, what do they call him? Like the professor, but it's the devil.
I think he's called the professor, but he's revealed later as Voland.
Okay, so they call him like this professor, I guess. They think he's a foreigner, and he's just like walking up to them and talking to them, and he ends up, I don't want to like spoil everything. They're just talking to
he ends up engaging, I guess, as well in the dialogue about, oh, so you don't believe in God, or you don't believe that Jesus existed, and he ends up predicting the death of one of them.
The professor that they're talking to is the devil. Like it's like the devil shows up in Moscow, but I'm not that far into it, so I can't really say much else.
Yeah, and it's a book that I told her I think like the first third will actually be a little slower. I think it's on the back half that you start to connect to these other things, demonic like entourage or trio that rolls in with the devil, and then once they start playing these kind of pranks on the Muscovites and in the city, I think it becomes more humorous and also just more engaging.
But I'm not disliking it.
That's good.
Which, like, for, again, we always say this, we read very different books. And I think the books that he reads, I typically would never ever pick up myself, but I'm surprised at how readable and approachable this book has been so far.
So I'm in kind of the same boat where this isn't like my normal cup of tea, but it's not, you know, a chore to read. I'm enjoying it for the most part.
Not only, you read 170 pages.
I've been rolling. Yeah, I'm like 170 pages in. I've kind of picked up where I left off with the book. Starting to remember all these different characters, Alice and Rhysand and Elaine and Nesta and all the whole crew, the whole gang still there. There's components that I don't love stylistically in this book that are, I think it's dependent on the audience and also even genre to some bit, but I feel like the dialogue is just a little choppy at times, a little short, a little stiff, whereas I'm used to these more kind of long, drawn out, not just sentences, but conversations and discussions that I feel...
so funny because I feel like these characters are so deep.
Yeah.
Well, and like, it's just different. It's just a different way of like describing how like deep they are. Like I think dialogue builds, like even if it's short and choppy and banter filled, because that's one of the things that he's been talking about, is that it just seems really sarcastic all the time. Like there's banter constantly. But I think that does add to their personality, because it's like, oh, Cassian, he's super, super goofy and like...
So that's actually one thing that I was thinking about bringing up. You may not notice this or agree with this, but I feel like a lot of the characters have the same tone of voice in the way that they all kind of have a sort of sarcastic snark. It's not like, oh, just Feyre's snarky or sarcastic, or just, you know, Cassian has these funny retorts. It's like all of them almost like jab at each other in the same way.
It's almost, think about like TV shows or movies that we grew up watching.
Like
I think they all fall into, like, Rhys falls into a certain category of person, and Cassian does too. She paints the picture of what the character is supposed to, like, what category they're supposed to be in. Like, Cassian's the funny jock in the group, and Azriel is going to be, like, the super quiet shadow.
Typecast.
Yes, it's very typecasting, but you kind of, because it's blatantly on the page, like, he is this kind of person. I, like, the way I imagine it is I fill in the gap of, like, oh, Cassian said it this way because that's his personality. And you kind of build the character as you're reading it, not necessarily her, like, even telling you how to build it.
In this book, because of the way that they speak, or the way that Mask creates empathy by telling you something in their past that makes you feel bad for them, I think those are ways where you're kind of directed, or your hand is held in how you should feel about a character and what you expect them to do. Versus in some of my books, there's a lot of ambiguity in the characters where, and not that these characters are all good or are all bad, but there's a little bit of more wiggle room on how you should feel about them, where they fit in.
It's funny though, because they call that morally gray. Whether you don't know whether like a character is like, but like Rhys is supposed to be morally gray because he's technically like...
He's the bad boy, but then he's doing these nice things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he'll kill people without thinking about it. Yeah. Because he kind of has to, but he doesn't want to, and it's more of like a duty thing that he has to do.
But again, it's interesting just to see like in what ways... I might be more... dialogue or other underlying components driven in the way that I like a character to be developed, versus you will have it performed in a different manner, or prefer to have it performed in a different manner.
I think it's just what we prefer in books, and I do think that's really cool. We're allowed to have our own opinions.
That's right.
That's my favorite thing to say. Okay. Hello, I'm here to update The Master and Margarita because I'm 100 pages in, and I don't really love this book so far. I think One thing I've noticed with a lot of Brock's books, because we talk about what we read with each other, and when he tells me that he's reading a book, you know, and he describes it, and he describes the plot and the characters, it all seems like a fever dream. It all just seems like what the fuck are these characters doing? What are they saying? Why are they saying it that way? Like, why can't they just talk normally? Like, I don't quite understand the plot just yet. 100 pages in, and I'm not hating it. I just don't think this is my kind of book. Just like Asimov is probably not Brock's kind of book. We all have our own taste. We're all allowed to have our own opinions and what we like and dislike in books. And I just find it so interesting how different our tastes are. And that's completely fine and so fun to like realize that in a partner and in a spouse, and we can still share the same hobby yet it be so incredibly different. But anyway, we have Moscow that has been invaded by the devil and the devil's little companions. This weird bowler hat guy and a black cat who kind of like smirks and has a personality and can talk. They're kind of just tormenting Moscow, it feels like this one poor guy, he's a poet. What is his name? Louis? He's a poet, and he basically sees the devil, and the devil predicts someone's death. The poet is like, oh my god, this guy just predicted this other man's death. Who is he? So he like reports him to the police. The poet kind of goes crazy. Okay, kind of goes a little cuckoo, but rightfully so, because he literally just met the devil, but no one believes him. So he's put in an insane asylum and is still spewing like, no, I swear to God, I met this guy who literally was alive when Jesus was alive, and he predicted someone's death. Yeah, he just kind of keeps digging himself a hole like deeper and deeper and deeper, and I'm like, no one's gonna believe you. I'll come back and update in another quarter, so maybe another 100 pages, and I'll update how I'm feeling then.
Alright, I am halfway into A Court of Mist and Fury. Things are a-moving, and Reese and Feyre have become much more affectionate and congenial over the past 150 pages or so. She's a lot less sassy, a lot more understanding his feelings for her and why he is not the bad boy he seems to be. And then also in the meantime, she's met Cassian and Azriel and a whole cast of other like kind of little characters here and there. And she's starting to develop more of confidence in her powers and wanting to seek them out and train for this war that is approaching from Hybern and all of that. So it's kind of throwing Tamlin back of her mind. She's not worried about him no more in the Spring Court. The city of Valera seems beautiful. It's very different. It's tucked away. No one knows about it. I imagine it as like a mountain town like Telluride or Ouray, Colorado, but like at night or something like that, because I think there's a lot of description of the stars and the lights and things like that, but then there's a lot of mountains around it. There's just been a lot more flirting back and forth with Reese. I told Maddie I'm just ready for them to get down to business. I don't usually read explicit content like that. It's not something I really look for in literature, not something that really does it for me. But I know that a lot of you girlies out there enjoy a good bit of smut. No harm, no foul. But I feel like we're headed for it. Is what I'm getting at. That's my point. Is it poorly written? No. But do I feel connected to the characters? No. To me, I feel like they're a little too typecast, which I think we said in the previous clip, where I know what I'm going to get from these characters. So for that reason, I feel like the believability and allowing myself to fall into the story isn't there. But there's still half the book to go, so we have a lot to discuss.
Okay, tell them what chapter you're on. We haven't done an update.
I'm on chapter 49.
Yeah, page 476.
Yeah.
He's going pretty quick.
The slow burn is burning. It's burning. It's burning the tips of my fingers, and it's getting a little toasty. The last chapter, it got a little...
I think it was the first little spicy scene, but it wasn't the scene.
Wasn't the scene, but...
He hasn't gotten there yet.
If it gets more than that, the pants are coming off. No. The plot's moving along. I think they're still looking for the orb so that they can convince the humans to give them the other half of the book. Yeah, she was at the Weaver. She stole the ring, and the Weaver, she's like blind, right? She's like, where is she? Who is here? And then Feyre's kind of slowly getting a feel for the different powers she has from everybody. She's kind of like Thanos. She's got like everybody's powers absorbed into her.
Yeah, she does.
And then Lucian showed up at some point. They were kind of making Moore's dad a cuckold for a bit. There's a lot of like little shenanigans they've been doing. And there's a little bit of diplomacy with Tarquin trying to get him to like hand over stuff, but I wouldn't say there's that much political movement going on. It's more like they're kind of hunting down these little trinkets that they need to get, kind of like an Avengers movie, so that they can fight Hybern on a more level playing field. Yeah. But what I'm wondering, babe, is where Claire better fits into all of this.
Babe, he keeps mentioning Claire. Claire's gone. She's dead.
That's what they want you to think.
No, that camera like slowly went down. Look, the camera.
You gotta tighten it.
The tripod's just slowly going down.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Yeah, he keeps mentioning Claire. What do you keep saying? Justice for Claire.
Justice for Claire. I'm not gonna forget that her family was slaughtered. They were slaughtered.
But Claire literally it doesn't matter in this series at all.
They mention her a few times, but no one's remembering.
Because Feyre feels this immense guilt
and she
for her death.
I don't forget about Claire. Claire's gonna come back in the 6th book.
She's not. Oh god, that would be not interesting at all.
Plot twist.
Alright, what else you got?
Nothing. I'm ready for the smut. I know it's coming.
You're really close. Don't look. Don't look ahead. Are you going to read more tonight?
Oh, yeah.
To ask, do you like Rhys?
I like him more than Tamlin. We've had a lot of screen time with him, so to speak, to where their relationship has kind of developed. At some points, it feels like there's kind of obvious, like, checkpoints that are being kind of propelled of them, like, getting closer and, like, wanting to, like, be intimate, but then kind of slowing back and then kind of moving forward and, like,
that's called tension.
Overt ways? Yeah. But I also feel like there's a little bit of hypocrisy. Tamlin had killed his family members, but then he, in revenge, had killed his family members. And then Feyre only is worried. She's like, Tamlin killed his family members. It's like, well, I mean, Rhys also
but, like, I think that's the whole thing, is Rhys is like, he is a bad guy who wants to be really good. But Tamlin is just bad. Like, he's just a bad guy. He's not trying to be better.
Babe, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain.
What is that from?
Dark Knight.
Oh, God. Okay. When do you think
the goal is finished this weekend.
Okay. And I have paused for the time being my Master Margarita because Onyx Storm came out, and I'm almost done with this and filming a separate vlog for this, so... Once I finish this, then I'll pick up the Master Margarita.
And she'll be sipping a margarita.
We don't drink. A mocktail.
A mocktail.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk about the good thing first.
Okay.
The romance author, Ashley Poston, that I read, she does a lot of, like, magical realism.
Yeah.
And I like that within this book.
Yeah.
Because it's trickled throughout. It is not like fantasy. It's not like a fantasy
It's like
book.
A base layer of real life with mystical and magical elements added to it, not the, like, inverse.
Yeah. Like the apartment, I think.
Yeah.
The scenes within this apartment where Voland and his entourage, they're a little goofy and play tricks on everyone that they encounter. And I do think if you think of it from like a broader lens and you like just think of like in a bird's eye view, like the apartment and then all of Moscow, it's kind of interesting to see like all of the chaos happening at once. Yeah. So I do like that.
Yeah, because you have them like tricking people on a personal level, and then people try and come to the apartment and they're being confused of like, it's like massive inside for one person, or like there's this entire ball, but then another person goes in, they're like, this is a tiny like 1-bedroom apartment. Yeah, what are you talking about? Like I like that, the illusion trickster elements that are happening. As the book's gone on, it's gotten a lot better actually. It does feel like I'm watching like a black and white movie. Like my brain can't imagine it as well as I read my own books. Is it more the dialogue that's lacking, or you think more the visual description? I think visual, and there's some lack of context with certain things. Like someone will randomly show up and I'm like, where did they come from? Why are they even here? And I don't know like what they're meant to, like what their purpose is in that scene, where I'm so used to following like one character like in first person at a time. Yeah, the third person view, and then when you have a very large... Yeah. It's not that there's a large cast of characters in this book, but there are a lot of like tertiary or auxiliary characters that don't necessarily serve an important function, but they're used to like illuminate a point or to move action along. And what's the bad news? I guess the
the black and white to me is kind of the bad news. It's like, I'm not entertained.
I thought when I read it, I thought it was neat at the ball. This isn't really much of a spoiler. Some of the participants are historical figures, like evil figures from the past.
I thought that was kind of cool.
And you're like, oh, so-and-so's there. And there's also, it kind of ties to that story of, or the song. Actually, this book inspired the song, Sympathy for the Devil by the Rolling Stones, where he says, like, the devil's like, I was there when Pontius Pilate killed Jesus, and I was there when blank, blank, blank. And so he's kind of like friends with all these people, and he's been there. And
I think I like the idea of this book a lot.
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy the movie better.
Yeah.
It might just be how it's being conveyed.
Maybe that's how it is. And maybe if it was I feel like I would love it if it was told in first person. Like if it was from the like different POVs of like Margarita's POV, and you're kind of seeing the inner thoughts. That would be an interesting way to like retell it. Oh, I would love that. I think I would like that a lot more.
We'll have Emily Henry write the retelling.
Okay. That's the update for now. I think I will update just one more time. Maybe when I just finish it. What chapter are you on?
55. We've been waiting for this the whole time.
She just made it.
I've been edging for 54 chapters.
Babe.
I am on page 553, chapter 56. Oh, I'm trying to finish tonight.
He's gonna try to finish.
I have about 80 pages on the dot to go.
What do you think it's gonna end with? Because last night we were talking and you weren't sure how it was gonna end.
I think they're maybe gonna get like the other half of the book that they've been trying to get from the humans, or maybe Tamlin will show it towards the end, and he'll want his girl back, and she'll be like, I don't want you no more. I think something like that. Or I've been telling her Claire might show back up.
Claire, your obsession with Claire's gotta stop. He is obsessed. I don't think Claire's even mentioned in the third book.
Her legacy lives on.
Okay.
But we're gonna read.
Okay.
Time lapse.
Time lapse. Alright. What spell?
Why did they have her have to read the spell?
Wait.
Of all people?
Wait, what spell? I don't
Of the Book of Breaths or Breathings.
Book of Breaths.
The Book of Breathings. She has to read the spell. She can't read.
I don't remember the spell.
The spell. The words. I look to the paper in my hand.
She's shaking. Where are they right now?
They're by the cauldron.
I forgot about the spell. What spell?
Oh, look how the cookie crumbled.
Is that the term?
No.
Tamlin and Lucian.
Bunch of snakes.
Now you know why we don't like Tamlin.
The snakes are in the garden, babe. You think you know someone. Do they not remember Claire?
Babe, no more Claire.
So here's my thing. Sarah J is doing a little too much acrobatics with everybody's selling each other out on a layered system. Tamlin selling Fair out, but then you got Ianthe selling him out. And then before that, you had the queens selling Fair out. It's like...
no one's trustworthy.
These people have trust issues.
They do, don't they?
You know who never told a lie? I ain't gonna say it.
No more.
I did it.
I'm proud of you.
2 years later, I got it done.
You read that so fast, too. I was really surprised at how fast you read that.
It was about 8 days.
You read the first book, and you rated it, when we first read it, 3 stars. What would you rate this book?
3.5.
Really? Just a 0.5?
3.5.
It's just a little bit better?
Definitely better than the last book.
Comparison to the first book, like what do you think changed or added anything?
I feel like from memory the writing was better, but I do feel like the ending of both books, the climax of the chaos, it was very high, like it was very heightened and intense, but the resolution was too easy to come by. It's like the last time, like she just had to remember that the riddle answer was love, and then in this instance she's like, actually you can break my bond here. But it's not my real bond.
Yeah.
It was just like a little too clean cut.
But now she's back in enemy territory.
And then them getting caught too doing the thing was a little too like them getting caught by the cauldron, and then it's like step behind the shadow of the curtain. It's Tamlin and Lucian.
What do you think about her going back to Tamlin?
Well, she's spying, you know. Tamlin's so dumb though. He's like, and you'll be with me forever? And she's like, forever? And he's like, it's like, come on, dude. Is he that dumb?
Would you / will you ever read the third book?
this video is going to have to get crazy likes.
Okay. Oh, wait.
Oh,
we finished. We finished each other's books. I finished Master and Margarita and gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I couldn't remember. And you gave...
I gave this 3 as well. I
no,
feel like you
said 3.5.
Did I say 3.5?
I thought so, because you gave a quarter...
maybe I said that. Yeah, maybe it's a half star better than A Court. It's definitely better than A Court of Thorns and Roses. So I want to know what worked best for you in this novel, like what kept your attention the most or enthusiasm if there was any, and what wasn't, what was like your most kind of put off components of it?
I think what kept me interested was actually knowing that you really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So like I wanted to understand or like see why, or maybe not even see why, but just like read one of your favorite books and know, and it kept me wanting to read it. Like kind of to see what you felt with the characters or understand the plot a little bit. But for me, I didn't love some of the like, I know you thought I would, some of the magical elements.
Yeah, supernatural.
I think my magic is just different than what this was, but I can understand how like this is a fantasy-ish book.
Yeah, fantasy's different than supernatural. Like fantastical and fantasy, they're like the same word, but how they're implemented in fiction, I think, is very different.
Very different. And I did enjoy it. I read it. At least I didn't DNF it.
It's true.
I was worried. I was like, what if I get like halfway through or like 3/4 of the way and I'm like, man, this is not going well. But I've said this many times. It was a lot easier to read than I thought it would be. I was expecting something like I would have to have the dictionary out all the time, you know? So I did enjoy it. Wasn't my favorite. I mean, I'll read another book of his one day, but...
I told you, like, I kind of struggle with what to suggest after that if that didn't work.
It's not that it didn't work. I would recommend it, and there are certain people who I know, like, I know I'm in the minority on this one, so...
Maybe not within kind of your sphere of the book community, though. What worked best for me in this book was, I think, just, like, the grandeur and opulence of it all. I think the description... it's very compelling, it's very vivid, and even someone who isn't overly, like when I read things, or even in like when I dream, I feel like my mind isn't the most actively, it's not the most actively visual, kind of mind, and that's not generally what I look for in novels, or in fiction overall, but it still worked really well for me. I have to think.
And actually, right when you said that, what's the devil's name? Voland?
Yeah.
I wish we had more of him in this book, because he was obviously a focal point in the book. Yeah. But towards the end, when him and Margarita had like communication, and he was talking to some of his little entourage people, I was like, he's kind of like cool, but he wasn't a big focal point for the majority of this book. So that
leads me to a good point. Most of the books I read, like this one, have a very diverse and wide cast of characters, and you're reading from third-person view, and you're getting different perspectives like that. I know your books sometimes have different perspectives, and there is a perspective switch at the end of this one, but it's primarily told through first person, and I wasn't fully in love with the character of Feyre and like the perspective I was getting. I didn't feel like connected to.
Yeah, you're not wrong in that. A lot of people feel that way.
Yeah, so. I didn't feel overly connected to her and her kind of struggles and her issues. So I think that maybe held back my enjoyment of the work a little bit, and it kind of probably overlaps into some of the dialogue. And how I felt like, it's funny, you feel like that dialogue is unrealistic, and to some extent, I think it is a bit more old-fashioned and overplayed, It
just seems like they're super high, everything's a hyperbole, like everything is super grand, and I don't know.
Yeah, sometimes it's a little, like, performative, or a little bit unrealistic in that way, versus I feel like this is almost too like terse or too sarcastic, like every kind of conversation.
I didn't love which I think a lot of people who do love the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, we love the banter that the characters can provide, and kind of that sarcastic humor where we want.
Oh, you know what killed me about it?
What?
So, related to the banter, what kills me is they're in the midst of an imminent war. I probably said this in one of the clips. Yeah. Imminent war. Terror is approaching. Death is waiting in the wings. And Feyre and Rhys are just having this, like, rendezvous.
You just wait until the third book, something happens, and everyone's like, how can they do this?
Yeah, and between that and the sarcasm, I'm like, let's be serious here. Like, lives are at stake,
but
you know?
Was,
so that
like,
was...
a battle scene as well in there.
There was.
Yeah.
So I just feel like some of that took me out of it, and although it's a fictional work, it kind of makes this barrier. It reminds me I'm reading fiction.
But you're reading a romance as well. So you gotta, like, I think that's where some of the stuff breaks apart. Is like, yeah, they're in a war, but it's also a romantasy. Like, it's a fantasy world where there is a war, but don't forget that they're in love. Don't forget that they're supposed to be having fun and that they're meeting each other. Like, they're supposed to be in love.
Fun is part of war. Remember that.
Why do you think this book is as popular as it is, or this series? Why do you think, like, millions and millions of people have rated this book so highly or, like, love it? There might be a TV show or movie coming out of it. There's obviously more books coming out in the series.
I think the world is very stimulating and exciting. I think the characters, although people don't love Feyre, I think they can kind of implant themselves in that first person view, and feel like it's much more escapism than some of the heavier components that might be in a novel like that, where you're dealing with an oppressive authoritarian regime and you're thinking about death and free will and all of that.
Yeah.
So it's very different. So that would be my guess, is that it's just more sensually compelling on multiple layers.
It also probably provides like that sense of, because I know this is an adult fantasy romance, but a lot of the people who have been reading it had that fangirl sense when they were teenagers, and now that we're adults, you kind of cling on to familiarity, and you're like, oh, I want to love something like I loved One Direction when I was 13 years old. It's that similar bond, I think, or that similar like chemical something in your brain. And obviously I don't think you had that growing up with like a band, or like you didn't fangirl over.
Yeah, I think there is a particular charisma. Women naturally will cling to something like this a little bit harder than guys, although I know there is like the equivalent in the male world that might cling to Sanderson. I think it's just a little less common for the kind of fangirl experience, I guess. Yeah. But I do get that.
But that's it. We did it.
Woo!
I think if we were to swap books in the future, I don't know what I would have you read.
I told you I'm like interested in Bachman, or John Gwynne.
Yeah, but I haven't read his books.
I thought you read the first one.
Frederick Bachman, I feel like, would be a better start, because you know how much I love his books, and I feel like they're similar to yours.
The only one I feel like you might like is the Bell Jar, but like I told you, I'm worried it's like a little bit too bleak and dismal.
It's okay.
But
I read A Little Life. I like bleak and dismal books.
Yeah, but I don't want you depressed.
Okay. Okay. That is it for this video. Thank you guys for coming along. Maybe, hopefully, do another one of these.
Maybe in 2 years I'll read the next one.
Okay. Another 2 years.
So it starts with Feyre in the forest, and she's just hunting as girls do. And she shoots this magical white giant ass wolf, and she doesn't know it, but it's a fae. And then comes back home to her little cottage, her little shack, and then later her and her sister go to the market. There are these like weird people kind of hanging around the village that come in briefly. I think they got hoods or they got something, and then they come back home. And then later Tamlin shows up, kicks in the door, and he's like, "Where is she?" He's like, "You're coming with me, lady." And everyone's like, what's going on? And then so she brings Feyre over into Magical Land, and in Magical Land, over the wall, I think there's a wall. She's at first like sleepyhead, kind of sleeps in. She's like, "I don't like this guy. He's got this like insanely massive house and everything's perfect here, but you know what? I want to go home. I don't like this." And then he starts showing her this painting room. He's like, "You can paint wherever you want. You can do what you want." And then there's this like nice like maid that's being real sweet to her, and she's like, he's actually not too bad. And then there's also this guy Lucian. I think he's got like red eyes, or he's got something going on. He's a cool guy. I think Feyre and Tamlin make whoopee, and then
But it's not that graphic in that one.
No, it's fade to black, but they do. The whoopee is intended or implied. And there's also these creatures. There's like these like dark creatures or shadowy things trying to get Feyre, I think, if I remember correctly. and Tamlin and Lucian are kind of protecting her, and that's why she's got to stay in the maybe it's the Spring Garden or something like that. She's got to stay in their like realm, or no, the court. It's a court. Their court. Yeah, I said it before you told me. There's courts. There's a Spring Court. There's all the season courts, of course. Mm-hmm. Anyway, at some point they go to like a ballroom, I think, and they're dancing. There'd be a ballroom in Master and Margarita, so they're like the same novel. And then at some point, and we get introduced to Rhysand. Mm-hmm. However you say it. And he's kind of a dickhead in this novel.
Do you remember that, like, because the middle is kind of what you said, they're kind of, you know, playing, painting along. Do you remember the end with Amarantha?
Oh, yeah, I'm getting there. I'm giving them a whole synopsis.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So then he meets, like, Rhysand, who's a jerk for this book. And he ends up being, like, the little henchman for Amarantha. Is that her name? Yeah. Amarantha. And she's, like, under this mountain, of course, because that's where all the bad people are always hanging out, under mountains. And she's hanging out there. Feyre goes there. I don't remember why she ends up going there. Maybe she's got to, like, get back, or because they keep coming after her. No, I feel like she gets, like, kidnapped or lured out there. Anyway, she ends up there.
Do you want me to tell you?
No, not right now. I'm in a group. And then they give her all these, like, trials and things she has to do. And I don't remember all of them, but they're kind of silly. Like, she can't, like, read, and so they're kind of messing with her and just bullying her. And then she has to, like, fight this Alaskan bullworm, and she does that. And then the last, it's some stupid riddle at the end.
It, like, means the answer to the riddle was, like, love.
Yeah, the answer is love.
I always forget the riddle itself.
There's a character that's, like, trapped in a ring or something.
Okay, yeah, good.
Yeah,
you remember a lot.
And that's 2 years ago, people.
Yeah,
2 years ago. No review.
Whose fault is that?
But yeah, and that's the end. I think Amarantha, she doesn't, like, die. I think she gets trapped in a ring.
She dies.
She dies, actually.
Remember, that was the part of the riddle, I think. His heart was literally
because he was kind of controlled by Amarantha towards the end. Yeah. Okay.
We're going to have to refresh on a few things, but you remembered a lot. A lot more than I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good for you. All right. You're going to start it when?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.